I was standing in the garden when I heard it, that particular tone of voice that makes your blood run cold even before you process the words. 23 years of being a mother teaches you to recognize contempt, even when it's wrapped in sugar and delivered with a smile. Well, my mom helps with real money. The words floated through the open window from the living room where my daughter-in-law sat with her mother, their laughter following like a knife twist. I was 67 years old, dirt under my fingernails from planting the roses I'd brought for their new house, and I felt every single year of sacrifice crystallize into something sharp and cold in my chest. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now, back to my story. My name is Eleanor Hartwell, and I have spent the last 4 decades believing that family meant something, that blood was thicker than water, that the children you raise will remember the woman who went without so they could have everything. I was wrong, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began, not in that moment of casual cruelty in the garden, but years earlier, when I first started to see the cracks in the foundation I'd built my entire life upon. It started as these things often do with a wedding. My son Connor was 28 when he brought Vanessa home for the first time. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are. Long dark hair, perfect skin, and a smile that could make you forget to ask the important questions. She worked in marketing, drove a car that cost more than I made in 2 years, and had opinions about wine that she delivered with the confidence of someone who'd never had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. Mom, isn't she amazing? Connor's eyes shone when he looked at her, and my heart twisted because yes, she was lovely. And yes, my boy was happy, and that's all a mother wants, isn't it? I pushed down the small voice that whispered warnings, the way she glanced around our modest living room with barely concealed pity, the way she mentioned her parents' lake house, their timeshare in Aruba, her mother's interior designer, the way she never quite asked about my life, my interests, my own story. She's wonderful, sweetheart, I told Connor, and I meant it, or I wanted to mean it, which is almost the same thing when you're trying to be a good mother. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Vanessa's parents, Richard and Catherine Monroe, took charge immediately, not because they asked, but because they simply assumed. The venue would be the country club where Catherine was a member. The flowers would be ordered from her preferred florist. The caterer was someone they'd used for years. We just want everything to be perfect for our little girl, Catherine said to me over lunch one day, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured with her wine glass. I'm sure you understand, Eleanor. A mother wants to give her daughter the wedding she's always dreamed of. I smiled and nodded because what else could I do? I was a retired elementary school teacher living on a pension and the savings I'd carefully guarded for decades. My late husband, Thomas, had died of a heart attack 6 years earlier, leaving me with a paid-off house and enough money to live modestly if I was careful. The wedding budget was $45,000. I felt the number like a punch to the stomach when Vanessa's mother mentioned it casually, as if it were nothing, as if everyone spent that much, as if the number wasn't more than I'd earned in an entire year of teaching. Of course, we're covering most of it, Catherine continued, not seeming to notice how my hand had frozen on my coffee cup. But traditionally, the groom's family contributes to certain elements. We were thinking perhaps you could handle the rehearsal dinner. Nothing too elaborate. We're thinking the Italian place downtown should run about $5,000 for the guest list we have in mind. $5,000. I had that in savings. I'd been keeping it for emergencies, for the roof repair I knew was coming, for the inevitable medical expenses that accompany getting older. But I looked at Connor's hopeful face and heard myself say yes. Of course, I heard myself saying. I'd be honored. The relief in the room was palpable. Catherine's smile warmed several degrees. Vanessa reached over and squeezed my hand. Connor beamed, and I felt the first small piece of myself chip away. The rehearsal dinner was beautiful. I used every penny of that $5,000 and added another $800 from my monthly pension. The Italian restaurant outdid themselves. There were flowers on every table. Not as elaborate as what Catherine had ordered for the wedding, but lovely. The menu was carefully selected. The wine was good. Catherine's toast mentioned the venue and the food without mentioning who had paid for it. When people complimented the dinner, she thanked them graciously, as if she'd arranged it herself. I told myself it didn't matter. This was about Connor's happiness. The wedding itself was stunning. I wore a dress I'd found on sale and had altered to fit. Navy blue, simple, appropriate. Next to Catherine in her designer gown, I felt like a sparrow standing next to a peacock, but I held my head high. During the reception, I watched Connor dance with Vanessa, both of them glowing with joy, and I thought maybe the sacrifice had been worth it. Maybe this was what love looked like, giving everything so the people you cherished could have their dreams. It was during the cake cutting that I overheard the conversation that should have warned me. I was standing near the bar, and Vanessa's mother was holding court with several of her friends. "Oh, we're so pleased with how everything turned out," Catherine was saying. "You know how it is. You want to give your children every advantage. Richard and I have always believed in investing in Vanessa's future." "What about Connor's family?" one of the friends asked. "Are they contributing to the newlyweds' start?" I leaned closer, curious despite myself. Catherine's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Well, his mother is sweet. She's a retired teacher, you know. Very modest means. She did what she could with the rehearsal dinner. Bless her heart. Bless her heart." The Southern woman's way of saying poor thing without sounding cruel. "But that's what we're here for," Catherine continued. "Richard and I have already set them up with a down payment for their first home. We can't have our daughter struggling, can we? Not when we have the means to help." The way she said struggling made it clear what she thought of people like me. People who counted pennies and clipped coupons and made do with good enough instead of perfect. I should have said something then. Should have walked away. Should have protected myself. Instead, I finished my cheap wine and smiled for the photographer. Over the next 3 years, I watched the pattern establish itself. Connor and Vanessa bought their first house, a beautiful colonial in an upscale neighborhood 30 minutes from where I lived. The down payment came from the Monroes. The furniture came from the Monroes. When Vanessa got pregnant with their first child, the nursery was decorated by Catherine's interior designer. "We want our grandchild to have the best," Catherine explained when I saw the nursery for the first time. It was Pinterest perfect, all soft grays and whites, with a crib that cost more than my first car. The baby shower was at the country club. I wasn't asked to host it. When little Emma was born, I fell in love instantly. She had Connor's eyes and Vanessa's dark hair, and holding her felt like holding a piece of my own heart outside my body. "I'd like to help with babysitting," I offered. "Whenever you need, I'm available." Vanessa smiled that perfect smile. "That's so sweet, Eleanor. But Mom's already arranged her schedule to help out. She's got so much experience with children and she's closer to the house." Catherine lived 20 minutes from them. I lived 30. 10 minutes had become a chasm, but I didn't push. I visited when invited, brought gifts I'd carefully budgeted for, held my granddaughter when allowed, and swallowed the small hurts that accumulated like stones in my chest. Emma was followed by Jacob 2 years later, then Grace 18 months after that. 3 grandchildren I adored, 3 children I barely knew. The Monroes were at every birthday party, every school event, every holiday. They were the ones in the photos, the ones the children ran to, the ones who could afford the expensive gifts and elaborate celebrations. I was the grandmother who sent cards and showed up when asked and tried not to notice how often I wasn't asked. "Mom, you understand, don't you?" Connor said once when I mentioned feeling left out of Grace's birthday planning. "Vanessa's mom just has more time and she loves doing this stuff. It doesn't mean we don't value you." Value. Such a specific word choice. I understood what I was valued for, my willingness to stay in the background, my ability to not make demands, my acceptance of whatever scraps of attention came my way. Thomas would have been furious. My late husband had been a quiet man, but he'd had strong feelings about respect and family loyalty. I found myself talking to his photograph more and more, explaining choices I wasn't sure I could defend. I'm doing it for Connor, I told the picture on my nightstand. He's happy. That's what matters. The photograph didn't answer, but I could imagine what Thomas would say. He'd remind me that happiness built on the diminishment of others isn't real happiness at all. That teaching our children to take us for granted teaches them to become takers. But Thomas wasn't here, and I was, and I kept trying. The real breaking point began, ironically, with an act of generosity. Connor called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice warm with excitement. "Mom, I have something to ask you, and I want you to feel free to say no if it doesn't work for you." My heart lifted. He sounded like my son again, not the distant, preoccupied man he'd become. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Vanessa and I have been talking about the kids' education. We want them to go to good colleges, but the cost is just astronomical these days. I was thinking about how you and Dad always believed in education, how you sacrificed to send me to college. I had. Thomas and I had worked extra jobs, gone without vacations, driven old cars, all to make sure Connor graduated debt-free from a good university. I was wondering," Connor continued, "if you'd ever thought about starting college funds for Emma, Jacob, and Grace. I know it's a lot to ask, but even small contributions over time would make such a difference. Vanessa's parents are doing funds too, of course, but we thought it would be meaningful if both sets of grandparents were involved." Something in my chest eased. This was it, a way to be part of their lives, to contribute something lasting, to show my grandchildren that their grandmother had invested in their futures. "I'd love to," I said. "Let me work out what I can do." I spent the next week with my financial advisor, a kind woman named Ruth, who'd been helping me manage my modest savings since Thomas died. "Eleanor, are you sure about this?" Ruth's expression was concerned as she looked at the numbers I was proposing. "This would be a significant portion of your retirement savings." "I want to do this," I said firmly. "These are my grandchildren." Ruth helped me set up 3 5-for-29 college savings plans. I made an initial deposit of $15,000 to each, $45,000 total, nearly half of my carefully saved retirement nest egg. Then I committed to contributing $500 monthly to be divided among the 3 accounts. $500 was a quarter of my monthly pension. It would mean no more dinners out, no more small luxuries, careful budgeting for everything. But it felt right. It felt like finally having a real role in my grandchildren's lives. I told Connor about the funds at Sunday dinner at his house. The whole family was there. Connor, Vanessa, the 3 children, and of course Richard and Catherine Monroe. "I've set up college funds for each of the children," I announced, my voice proud. "They're all established now, with initial deposits and monthly contributions planned." Connor's face lit up. "Mom, that's incredible. Thank you so much." But Vanessa's expression was harder to read. She glanced at her mother, some unspoken communication passing between them. "That's very generous, Eleanor," Catherine said, her tone perfectly pleasant and somehow condescending at the same time. "Every little bit helps, doesn't it? Every little bit." As if $45,000 was pocket change. "The kids will appreciate it," Richard added, already turning his attention back to his phone. "Good thinking." I should have felt happy. Instead, I felt dismissed. But I pushed the feeling aside and focused on Emma, who was showing me a drawing she'd made at school. For the next year, I faithfully made those monthly contributions, $500 every month, divided among 3 accounts. I adjusted my budget, cut back on everything I could, and felt good about what I was building for my grandchildren. I imagined their college graduations, imagined being able to tell them, "Your grandmother helped make this possible." I imagined mattering. The Monroes, meanwhile, continued their pattern of grand gestures. They took the family to Disney World, a trip I wasn't invited on because we thought you'd find it too tiring, Eleanor. They renovated Connor and Vanessa's kitchen as a surprise gift. They bought a season pass to the Children's Museum and took the grandkids every week. I sent birthday cards and made my monthly deposits and tried not to feel like I was shouting into a void. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. It was late October, the leaves turning gold and red outside Connor's windows. The family had gathered for Sunday dinner, as had become tradition. I'd brought a homemade apple pie. I couldn't afford expensive gifts, but I could still bake. I was in the hallway, looking for the bathroom, when I heard Vanessa and Catherine talking in the study. The door was slightly ajar, and their voices carried. "I just don't understand why Connor felt the need to involve his mother in the college funds," Vanessa was saying, frustration sharp in her voice. "We already have everything set up with your contributions." "Darling, let her feel involved," Catherine replied. "She's contributing what she can. It's not significant money, but it makes her feel useful." Not significant money. $45,000 plus $500 a month for the past year. Not significant. "It's just..." Vanessa's voice dropped lower, and I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "Sometimes I feel like we're supposed to be grateful for these tiny gestures when you and Daddy are the ones actually securing the children's futures. You're putting in 10 times what she is, and you never make a production of it. 10 times. The Monroes had put in $450,000. The number was incomprehensible to me. "That's because we have the means," Catherine said simply. "Your father and I believe in quietly ensuring our family's well-being. Not everyone has that luxury." "I know, and I'm grateful. I just wish Connor would stop treating his mother's contributions like they're on the same level as yours. It's not the same thing." "Let it go, sweetheart. In the grand scheme of things, what she's doing is sweet. That's all. Just smile and let her feel included." Sweet. Let her feel included. I stood in that hallway, my homemade pie feeling ridiculous in my hands, and something inside me crystallized into perfect, cold clarity. I wasn't a grandmother to these people. I was a charity case they humored, but I didn't storm in. I didn't confront them. I walked back to the dining room, served my pie with a smile, kissed my grandchildren goodbye, and drove home in silence. That night, I looked at my bank statements, really looked at them. In the past year, I had contributed $6,000 to the college funds, $500 a month times 12 months, plus the initial $45,000, $51,000 total. My retirement savings, which had been modest but secure, were now depleted by more than half. I had perhaps $80,000 left to live on for the rest of my life, and I was 67 years old with no other income besides my pension. I had impoverished myself to fund an investment that Vanessa and her mother considered not significant money. And the worst part? They were right. Compared to what the Monroes were contributing, my sacrifice was a drop in the bucket. It wouldn't make a real difference to my grandchildren's education, but it was destroying my own security. I thought about my sister Linda, who lived in Arizona. She'd warned me about this years ago. "Ellie, you can't buy your way into their lives," she'd said after the wedding, "and you're going to bankrupt yourself trying." I'd told her she didn't understand. That family was worth any sacrifice. Now sitting in my small house with my depleted savings statements spread across the kitchen table, I finally heard what Linda had been trying to tell me. You can't sacrifice yourself into being valued. You can only sacrifice yourself into being used. I spent the next week in a fog of realization and grief. Everything I'd excused, every small hurt I'd swallowed, every dismissal I'd ignored, it all came rushing back with new clarity. The way Vanessa introduced me to her friends. "This is Eleanor, Connor's mom," never my mother-in-law with any warmth. The way Catherine spoke over me in conversations about the grandchildren, as if my decades of teaching experience meant nothing. The way Connor had slowly stopped calling me for advice, for company, for anything beyond obligatory holiday visits. The way my grandchildren barely knew me because I'd never been given the space to be part of their daily lives. I'd been so busy trying to earn my place in this family that I'd never stopped to ask if they were earning their place in my life. The answer was clear. They weren't. But what could I do? Cut them off entirely? That would only hurt me more. Make a scene? That would paint me as the bitter, jealous old woman they probably already thought I was. No. If I was going to act, it needed to be strategic, clean, final. I called Ruth, my financial advisor. Ruth, I need to talk about the college funds. Of course, Eleanor. How can I help? I want to know what my options are for closing them. There was a pause. Closing them? Eleanor, you've put significant money into those accounts. There would be penalties, tax implications. I understand. I just need to know what's possible. Ruth's voice gentled. What's going on? And for the first time since Thomas died, I told someone the whole truth about the wedding, the baby showers, the constant comparisons, the overheard conversation, all of it. Oh, Eleanor, Ruth said softly when I finished, I'm so sorry. I need to protect what I have left, I said. I've been a fool, but I don't have to continue being one. Give me a day to work out the details, Ruth said. We'll figure out the best way to handle this. Ruth called back the next afternoon with options. The best approach is to designate the funds to different beneficiaries, she explained. You establish these accounts, and you have the right to change the beneficiaries. There will be some paperwork, but it's completely legal and within your rights as the account owner. Who would I designate instead? Anyone pursuing higher education. It could be yourself if you wanted to take classes. It could be children of friends or family members. Some people donate them to scholarship funds. An idea began forming in my mind. What about my sister's grandchildren? Linda's 2 grandchildren, her daughter's kids, were bright, hard-working, and living on limited means. Her daughter was a single mother working 2 jobs to keep her kids fed and housed. College seemed like an impossible dream for them. That would work perfectly, Ruth confirmed. As long as they're planning to pursue higher education, you can designate the funds to them. Let's do it, I said. All 3 accounts. I want them transferred to Linda's grandchildren. Are you sure? This is going to cause a reaction with your son's family. I'm sure. We spent an hour on the phone handling the paperwork. By the time we finished, the 3 college funds I'd established for Emma, Jacob, and Grace had been legally redesignated to benefit different children. Children who would actually appreciate the sacrifice. Children whose family valued what I could offer. The money I'd already contributed, $51,000, would now educate kids who needed it, not add a tiny fraction to the massive funds the Monroes had already established. It's done, Ruth said finally. The notifications will go out to the previous beneficiaries' guardians in the next few days. They'll be informed that the accounts have been closed and redesignated. Thank you, Ruth. Eleanor, I think you're doing the right thing. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. I felt lighter than I had in years. Scared, yes. Sad, absolutely. But also free. I had stopped setting myself on fire to keep people warm who had never noticed I was cold. The call came 3 days later. Mom, what the hell did you do? Connor's voice was shocked, angry in a way I'd rarely heard. Even as a teenager, he'd been even-tempered, slow to rage. I made some changes to the college funds, I said calmly. I was sitting in my garden, my phone on speaker, surrounded by the roses I'd planted over the years. I realized I needed to redirect my resources. Redirect, Mom. You canceled our kids' college funds. Do you understand what you've done? I didn't cancel them. I redesignated the beneficiaries. That's the same thing. You promised you'd help with their education. And I did help. I contributed over $50,000 that I could barely afford. But I've realized that my contribution isn't valued the way I thought it would be. What are you talking about? Of course it's valued. Really? Because your wife and her mother don't seem to think so. Every little bit helps. Isn't that what Catherine said? Not significant money, according to Vanessa. Silence. You heard that? His voice was smaller now. I heard a lot of things, Connor. I've been hearing things for years, but I didn't want to believe them. I wanted to believe that I mattered to this family beyond being a convenient source of occasional money and holiday obligations. Mom, that's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time I was invited to something that wasn't a major holiday or birthday? When was the last time you asked about my life, my needs, my dreams? We've been busy with the kids, so have the Monroes, but they seem to have plenty of time for family involvement. The difference is, they're actually wanted. I'm tolerated. That's not true. But his protest sounded hollow even to my ears. Connor, I love you. I love my grandchildren. But I can't continue to impoverish myself to try to earn a place in your family that I should have had automatically. I have maybe 15 or 20 years left if I'm lucky, and I need to be able to live them with some security. So, you're just, what, cutting us off? I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Who did you give the money to? His voice had turned cold. If you gave our children's college money to some random charity, I gave it to family who will appreciate it. Linda's grandchildren, they actually need it. Linda's mom. Those kids aren't even your grandchildren. No, but their grandmother is my sister and their family, and they won't look at my sacrifice and call it not significant. I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background, shrill and angry. Connor's hand muffled the phone, but I caught fragments. Can't believe so petty. My mother would never. When Connor came back on the line, his voice was tight. Vanessa wants to talk to you. I don't think. But Vanessa was already on the phone. Eleanor, I don't know what you think you heard or what you're trying to prove, but this is unacceptable. Those were my children's college funds. You made a commitment. I made a commitment I shouldn't have, I said quietly. A commitment that was depleting my retirement savings while you and your mother mocked it behind my back. We never. Every little bit helps, I quoted. Not significant money. Let her feel included. Should I continue? Silence. You had no right to listen to a private conversation. You had no right to have it in my earshot, but I'm grateful you did. It opened my eyes. You're being incredibly selfish. These are your grandchildren we're talking about. Grandchildren I barely know because I've never been allowed to be a real grandmother to them. When was the last time I was asked to babysit Vanessa? When was the last time you called me for advice? When was the last time you treated me like family instead of an obligation? That's ridiculous. We invite you to everything. You invite me to watch from the sidelines while the Monroes play the starring role. There's a difference between being included and being displayed as proof that you're tolerating Connor's inferior family connections. How dare you? I dare, because I have nothing left to lose. You've already made it clear what you think of me and my contributions. I'm just finally believing you. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time in years, I'd told the truth. I'd stopped pretending. I'd stopped protecting people who had never protected me. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call. It rang 12 more times that evening. I declined them all. The next day, Catherine called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Eleanor, we need to talk about this situation. Her voice was crisp, businesslike, the voice of someone used to solving problems with authority and money. There's nothing to discuss, Catherine. Of course there is. You've made a rash decision based on hurt feelings, and I understand that, but we need to think about what's best for the children. I am thinking about what's best for children, just not your grandchildren. That's exactly what I mean. You're being emotional instead of practical. Now I'm prepared to overlook this incident if you'll simply reinstate the funds. We can all move past this unfortunate misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I heard exactly what you and Vanessa think of my contributions. Eleanor, her tone shifted, becoming almost motherly. You have to understand. Vanessa and I were just being realistic. We've put in substantially more money because we have substantially more money. That's not a judgment on you. It's simply facts. And the fact is, my contributions weren't valued, so I've redirected them to people who will value them. To strangers, to children who aren't even your blood, to family who treats me like family. This is absurd. You're going to throw away your relationship with your son and grandchildren over some overheard comments taken out of context? No. I'm going to protect myself from a family that has been slowly erasing me for years while taking my money and considering it insignificant. Nobody's been erasing you. When was the last time you included me in planning a birthday party, Catherine? When was the last time you asked if I wanted to be involved in the children's activities? When was the last time you treated me like an equal grandmother instead of a poor relation you have to tolerate? Silence. That's what I thought, I said softly. You've made your position clear through your actions for years. I was just too desperate to be loved to see it, but I see it now. If you do this, there will be consequences, Catherine said, and now her voice was cold. Connor and Vanessa are very hurt. The children will notice if you're not around. You'll lose your family. I already lost them, I said. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. I hung up. For 2 weeks, silence. No calls, no texts, no visits. I told myself this was what I'd expected, what I'd prepared for. Linda called every day, checking on me. Ellie, are you okay? I'm better than I've been in years, I said, and meant it. The kids are over the moon about the college funds, Linda said. Sarah cried when I told her. She never thought college would be possible for her kids. Sarah was Linda's daughter, working 2 jobs as a single mother, struggling every day to give her children a better life. Her kids, unlike my grandchildren, would know the value of what they were receiving. They would remember who made their education possible. I'm glad, I said. Really glad. But you're grieving too. I can hear it. She was right. I was grieving. Not for the people my son and his family had become, but for the people I'd believed them to be, for the family I'd thought I had, for the grandmother I'd wanted to be. I'll be okay, I told Linda. I'm just finally choosing myself. 3 weeks after I'd redesignated the funds, Connor showed up at my door. He looked terrible, exhausted, older somehow. For a moment, my heart ached with the old maternal instinct to fix whatever was hurting him. Then I remembered that what was hurting him was the loss of my money, not the loss of me. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. We sat in the living room where he'd grown up, surrounded by photos of him at every age. Connor the baby, Connor the boy, Connor the graduate, Connor the groom. And then, nothing. Because after the wedding, after Vanessa and the Monroes had taken over, there had been no more room for the kind of casual, loving family moments that create photo albums. I've been thinking, Connor said finally, about what you said, about how we've treated you. I waited. I talked to Vanessa, really talked, and to her mom, about how we've made you feel. And Vanessa doesn't think she's done anything wrong. She says you're being oversensitive, that every family has a grandmother who's more involved, and it just happens to be her mom because she has more time and resources. I see. But I think, he stopped, swallowed hard. I think maybe she's wrong. I've been going through my phone, looking at our messages over the past few years. Do you know how many times you've reached out to me compared to how many times I've reached out to you? I didn't answer. It's about 10 to 1. You call, you text, you ask about the kids, you send cards, you try to make plans, and I respond when it's convenient. I accept what you offer but never think to offer anything back. Connor, let me finish. Please. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I've been a terrible son. I got so caught up in Vanessa's world, in impressing her parents, in maintaining this lifestyle we've built, that I forgot where I came from. I forgot that you and Dad sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I forgot that family isn't about who has the most money or the best connections. It's about who shows up, who cares, who sees you as a person, not just a role. And Vanessa, does she understand this too? His silence was answer enough. She thinks you should apologize, he said finally. She thinks you were cruel to take away the kids' college funds as revenge. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. I told her that. She doesn't see the difference. And you, do you see the difference? Connor looked down at his hands. I'm trying to. I'm trying to see a lot of things I've been blind to, but not blind enough to choose differently. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean that you see the problem. But you're not willing to fix it. You're not willing to tell Vanessa that the way she and her mother have treated me is unacceptable. You're not willing to establish boundaries with the Monroes. You're not willing to make space for me and your family that doesn't depend on my being useful or invisible. That's not fair. It's absolutely fair. Because if you were willing to do those things, you would have done them already. You would have done them years ago, the first time you noticed me being pushed aside. But it was easier not to, wasn't it? Easier to let me fade into the background than to deal with conflict with your wife. I love Vanessa. I know. And I hope she loves you too, truly loves you, not just the lifestyle you represent. But Connor, love doesn't mean accepting cruelty. And what's been done to me is cruel, subtle, polite, wrapped in pretty words, but cruel nonetheless. We sat in silence. I want to fix this, Connor said finally, but I don't know how. You fix it by deciding what kind of man you want to be, what kind of husband, what kind of father, what kind of son, and then you act accordingly, regardless of who it makes uncomfortable. Will you give us another chance? The question I'd been both hoping for and dreading. I don't know, I said honestly. I need to see real change, Connor. Not promises, not good intentions, actual, sustained, meaningful change in how I'm treated and valued. And I need to see it before I make myself vulnerable again. That's fair. And the college funds aren't coming back. That money is doing good for children who need it. I don't regret that decision. He flinched but nodded. I understand. Do you? Because Vanessa needs to understand it too. I'm not a bank. I'm not a backup plan. I'm your mother, and if I'm going to be in your lives, it has to be as a full member of the family, not a tolerated obligation. I'll talk to her. You've been talking to her. I need to see that she's listening. A month passed. Connor called weekly, trying. He asked about my life, my health, my garden. He sent photos of the kids with messages that felt genuine. He invited me to Sunday dinner twice, and both times, when I arrived, I was greeted warmly. Catherine wasn't there either time. Mom's busy with her book club, Vanessa explained the first time, her smile tight. The second time, there was no explanation at all. I noticed things, small things. The way Vanessa's phone calls with her mother moved to another room when I was there. The way conversation about the children's activities stayed surface level, never going deep enough that I might offer to be involved. The way my presence was tolerated but not welcomed. After the second dinner, I told Connor I needed more time. I appreciate what you're trying to do, I said, but we're not there yet. What else can I do? He sounded frustrated, tired. I can't tell you what to do, Connor. This has to come from you. From your own conviction that the way your family treats me matters, that I matter, not because I'm useful or because I can contribute money, but because I'm your mother and a human being worthy of basic respect and inclusion. I think you matter, then show me. Don't just tell me. Show me in ways that cost you something. Show me in ways that might make Vanessa or her mother uncomfortable. Show me that I'm worth the conflict. I don't know if I can do that. And there it was, the truth, finally spoken aloud. Then I don't know if we can have a relationship, I said gently. Because I won't go back to setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I've done that for too long. 2 months after I'd redesignated the college funds, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hartwell, this is Jennifer Chen. I'm a reporter with the local newspaper. I'm doing a story about grandparents who redirect their resources to help at-risk youth access education. Your financial advisor, Ruth Morrison, mentioned that you recently took a significant step in that direction. Would you be willing to talk about your decision? I almost said no. The last thing I needed was to become a public story, to have Connor and Vanessa see my choices validated in print. But then I thought about other grandparents out there, other women who were depleting their savings to try to earn love from people who didn't value them, other people who needed permission to choose themselves. I'd be happy to talk, I said. The interview ran the following week. It was a small piece, tucked in the human interest section, but it told my story honestly. a grandmother who'd realized her contributions weren't valued and had redirected her resources to children who needed them. A woman who'd chosen self-preservation over self-sacrifice. They changed my name in the article, at my request. But Connor would know. Vanessa would know. Linda called as soon as the paper came out. "Ellie, you're famous." They quoted you saying, "I learned that you can't sacrifice yourself into being valued. You can only sacrifice yourself into being used." That's powerful stuff. It's just the truth. Sarah wants to write you a thank you note from her and the kids. Is that okay? Of course. The note arrived 3 days later, handwritten on simple paper. "Dear Eleanor, I don't have words big enough to thank you for what you've done for my children. When my mom told me about the college funds, I cried for an hour. I've been working 2 jobs trying to save for their education, but it felt impossible. Now, because of you, my kids have a real chance at a better life. I want you to know that we won't forget this. Ever. Your sacrifice means everything to us, and my children will grow up knowing that their great-aunt Eleanor believed in them when it mattered most. We're not just grateful for the money. We're grateful that someone saw us, saw our struggle, and chose to help. That kind of generosity changes lives. With all our love and gratitude, Sarah, Michael, and Lily." I kept that note on my refrigerator. On the hard days when I missed my grandchildren and wondered if I'd made the right choice, I read it and remembered, yes, I had. 4 months after the redesignation, Catherine called again. "Eleanor, I think we need to have a mature conversation about this situation." "There's no situation, Catherine. I made a choice. It's done. A choice that's affecting my daughter and grandchildren. Vanessa is very upset. The children have been asking about their college funds, and it's difficult to explain that their grandmother chose strangers over them. They're not strangers, they're family. And if the children are asking about college funds at ages 7, 5, and 3, someone is coaching them to ask. That's beside the point. The point is, you're causing unnecessary pain to people you claim to love." "Unnecessary," I repeated. "Tell me, Catherine, was it necessary for you and Vanessa to mock my contributions? Was it necessary to exclude me from my grandchildren's lives while taking my money? Was it necessary to treat me like a poor relation you had to tolerate? We never. You did, consistently, for years. And now you're upset that I've stopped letting you. I'm trying to find a solution here. There is a solution. Treat me with respect. Include me genuinely in the family. Value me as a person, not a bank account. Stop comparing my contributions to yours and measuring my worth by my wallet. That's not realistic. Our financial situations are different. Exactly. Which is why I've redirected my limited resources to people who appreciate them. You and Richard have more than enough money to fund your grandchildren's education 10 times over. They don't need my $50,000, but Sarah's children do. They really, truly do. So this is permanent? You're really going to throw away your relationship with your son over money? I'm not throwing away anything. I'm protecting what little I have left after years of trying to buy my way into a family that didn't want me. That's not true. Catherine, we both know it is. You've never wanted me in Vanessa's life. I was an embarrassment. The poor teacher mother-in-law who drove an old car and bought her clothes on sale. You tolerated me when necessary and excluded me when possible. The only difference now is that I've stopped pretending otherwise. If you maintain this position, you need to understand that you're choosing to have no relationship with your grandchildren. The threat was clear, and it hurt deeply. But I'd learned something important over these months. Sometimes protecting yourself means accepting painful losses. If my only options are to bankrupt myself to buy brief moments of tolerance, or to walk away and preserve my dignity and security, then I choose to walk away. It's not the choice I wanted, but it's the choice I'm being given. You're being incredibly selfish, maybe. Or maybe I'm finally being wise. 6 months after the redesignation, Emma had her 8th birthday party. I wasn't invited. Connor called the day after, apologetic but not surprised. Vanessa thought it would be too awkward, he said, given everything. I understand. Do you want to take Emma out for a birthday lunch, just the three of us? Will Vanessa be okay with that? His pause told me everything. I'll send a gift, I said. Give her my love. I sent a card and a modest gift card to a bookstore. Emma sent a thank you note a week later, clearly written at adult direction, polite and impersonal. Dear Grandma Eleanor, thank you for the birthday gift. I like books. Love. Emma. I put the note in a drawer with all the others, years of polite, distant acknowledgments of my existence. That night, I made a decision. I called my lawyer. I want to update my will, I said. The process took 2 weeks. When it was done, my modest estate was divided clearly. Connor would receive my house and its contents, family heirlooms, and personal effects. Everything else. My remaining savings, my pension beneficiary designation, my small life insurance policy, would go to a scholarship fund I was establishing for first-generation college students from low-income families, students like Sarah's children, students who would value education because they understood its cost. I sent Connor a copy of the new will with a letter. Dear Connor, I want you to know about this decision while I'm still alive and can explain it. You'll inherit this house and everything in it, because those are the tangible pieces of our family history. The photos, the furniture your father built, the memories embedded in these walls, those belong to you. But my financial resources will go to help students who remind me why education matters. Students who won't take it for granted. Students whose families will value the sacrifice required to make it possible. This isn't punishment. It's clarity. I spent years depleting my retirement savings to try to earn a place in your family. Now I'm ensuring that what's left does meaningful good in the world. I love you. I always will. You're my son, and nothing changes that. But I won't keep sacrificing myself to people who don't value the sacrifice. And I won't leave money to a family that measured my worth by comparing my contributions to the Monroes and found me lacking. I hope you understand. If you don't, I hope someday you will. Love, Mom Connor showed up at my door 2 days after receiving the letter. You're really doing this? You're really cutting out your own grandchildren? I'm not cutting them out of anything they were entitled to. They have trust funds from the Monroes that dwarf anything I could leave them. My money will actually make a difference to students who need it. This is about revenge. This is about reality. Connor, I'm 68 years old. I have limited resources and limited time. I can either spend both trying to earn love from people who don't want to give it, or I can spend them on things that matter. We matter. Do you? Because you've had 6 months to prove that. 6 months to show me that I'm valued in your family beyond my bank account. And what's changed? He didn't answer. I'm not invited to birthdays. I don't get asked to babysit. When I call, the conversations are polite but brief. Vanessa's still angry, Catherine's still condescending, and you're still stuck in the middle, trying to please everyone. I'm trying. I know you are. I can see that you're trying, but trying isn't the same as succeeding, and I can't keep waiting for a change that may never come. So this is it. This is how our relationship ends. It doesn't have to end, but it has to be different. I'm not going to be the grandmother who hovers on the margins hoping for scraps of attention. I'm not going to deplete my security chasing after people who don't want to be caught. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be real, mutual, equal. Vanessa will never accept that. Then Vanessa and I don't have a relationship. But Connor, you're not married to Vanessa's worldview. You can make your own choices about who you want to be and how you want to treat your mother. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. It's just not easy. A year after I redesignated the college funds, I got an unexpected visitor, Vanessa. She stood on my porch, looking uncomfortable in expensive athleisure wear, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. "Can we talk?" she asked. I almost said no, but curiosity won. We sat in my living room, the same place I'd sat with Connor a year earlier. "I owe you an apology," Vanessa said abruptly, "for how I've treated you, for things I said, for not seeing you as a person just as Connor's mom, I waited. My mother raised me to believe that success meant surrounding yourself with successful people, that you elevate yourself by association, that people who couldn't keep up weren't worth the energy. And I couldn't keep up. No, you couldn't. You don't have the money we have, the connections, the lifestyle, and I looked down on that. I looked down on you. At least she was honest. But watching what happened this year, watching Connor struggle with losing you, watching my kids ask about their grandmother who never comes around anymore, it's made me think about what I value, about what I'm teaching my children. What are you teaching them? That people are measured by what they can provide, that love is transactional. That family is something you tolerate when you have to and ignore when you can. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something real in her eyes, something vulnerable. My mother is furious that I'm here. She thinks I'm validating your tantrum. That's what she calls it, your tantrum, as if standing up for yourself is childish. What do you call it? I call it necessary. You were necessary. To yourself. We sat in silence. I don't know if I can be the daughter-in-law you want, Vanessa said finally. I was raised a certain way, with certain values, and changing that is hard, maybe impossible. I don't need you to change who you are. I just need you to treat me like a human being, to include me because you want to, not because you have to stop comparing my contributions to your parents' contributions and measuring me by impossible standards. I think I can try to do that. Trying isn't enough anymore, Vanessa. I need to see it, consistently, over time. I need to know that I matter to this family beyond being an obligatory invite to major holidays. Fair. And the college funds aren't coming back, that's done. She flinched. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. Good. Slowly, carefully, things began to shift. It started small, an invitation to Sunday dinner that felt genuine, a request to babysit Emma while Vanessa had a doctor's appointment, a phone call from Connor asking my advice about handling a work situation. I remained cautious. Years of pain don't heal because of a few kind gestures, but I also remained open. Because closing off completely would mean the people I loved had won. They'd succeeded in making me as small and bitter as they'd treated me. Catherine still didn't speak to me. When she was at family gatherings, I wasn't invited. But the gatherings where I was invited became more frequent. The grandchildren began to know me again. Slowly, carefully, I built relationships with them that didn't depend on expensive gifts or competition with their other grandmother. I taught Emma to bake bread. I took Jacob to the library and helped him discover his love of astronomy. I read to Grace until she fell asleep, her small hand in mine. I wouldn't bankrupt myself for them. I wouldn't sacrifice my security, but I could give them time, attention, love, the things I'd always had to offer if anyone had wanted them. 2 years after I redesignated the college funds, I received a letter from the scholarship fund I'd established. Dear Mrs. Hartwell, we wanted to update you on the impact of the Eleanor Hartwell First Generation Scholarship Fund. This year, we were able to award full scholarships to 3 students who otherwise would not have been able to attend college. The letter included photos and brief biographies of each student. Maria, whose parents were immigrants working in housekeeping and landscaping. She wanted to be a teacher. James, who'd aged out of foster care and was working full-time while trying to attend community college. He wanted to be a social worker. Kennedy, a single mother of 2 who'd gone back to school at 35 to pursue a nursing degree. 3 lives changed. 3 futures opened. 3 people who would know that someone had believed in them when it mattered. I put their photos on my refrigerator next to Sarah's thank you note. This was what my sacrifice had bought. Not a forced place in a family that didn't want me. Not tolerance purchased with depleted savings. But real, meaningful change for people who needed it. Connor and I met for lunch on my 70th birthday. Just the 2 of us, at a small cafe I loved. I've been thinking about something, he said as we ate. About what you said 2 years ago. About choosing what kind of man I want to be. And I've realized I let fear make too many of my choices. fear of conflict with Vanessa, fear of disappointing her parents, fear of admitting that the life we've built isn't as perfect as it looks from the outside. That's honest. I want to be a better son. Not perfect, because I don't think I know how to do that, but better, more present, more real. That's all I ever wanted. I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. We finished lunch and walked through the park near my house, the same park where I'd pushed him on swings when he was small, where Thomas and I had taught him to ride a bike, where our family had felt whole and simple and right. The kids ask about you all the time now, Connor said. Emma wants to know when she can come sleep over at Grandma's house again. She can come any time. Vanessa's mother isn't happy about it. I imagine not. But Vanessa is trying, really trying. She's set boundaries with her mom about family decisions. It's caused some fights, but she's holding firm. Good. Are you happy, Mom? With how things are now? I thought about it. About my smaller bank account and larger sense of peace. About the grandchildren I was finally getting to know. About the students whose lives I was changing. About the dignity I'd reclaimed. I'm at peace, I said, which is different from happy, but maybe better. I'm at peace with my choices. I'm at peace with what I can and can't control. I'm at peace with protecting myself, even when it's hard. I'm proud of you, Connor said quietly. I know that probably sounds strange, a son being proud of his mother. But I am. You taught me something important when you stood up for yourself. You taught me that love shouldn't require you to disappear. 3 years after I redesignated the college funds, I attended Emma's 11th birthday party. It was at Connor and Vanessa's house, a backyard barbecue with friends and family. Catherine was there. We were cordial, polite, distant. We would never be close, and I'd accepted that. But I was there. Not as an obligation, not as a tolerated guest, but as Grandma Eleanor, who Emma had asked for specifically because Grandma makes the best chocolate cake and I want her there. I'd made the cake, 3 layers, Emma's favorite, decorated with care. When I arrived, Emma ran to hug me, truly happy to see me. Jacob showed me his science project. Grace, now 6, climbed into my lap and refused to leave. Vanessa smiled at me across the yard, and it almost reached her eyes. Connor squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Thanks for coming, Mom. I stayed for 3 hours. I talked to people, played with the kids, helped serve cake. I was part of things. When I left, I drove home to my small house with my modest savings and my scholarship fund and my hard-won peace, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt valued, not for what I could provide, not for what I could sacrifice, not for how much I could deplete myself to earn love, but for who I was. Eleanor Hartwell, mother, grandmother, teacher, woman who'd learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is teaching them that you can't be taken for granted. Because I'd given them everything for so long that they'd forgotten I was someone, not just something to use. Now, they were learning. Slowly, imperfectly, but learning. And I was learning too, learning that I mattered, that my needs were valid, that choosing myself didn't make me cruel, it made me whole. The college funds I'd redirected had changed 6 lives, 3 students who wouldn't have had opportunities otherwise, and 3 grandchildren who were learning that love means more than money, that family is about presence, not presents, that the grandmother who shows up matters more than the one who writes checks. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, standing in that garden, hearing those words, "My mom helps with real money." She'd been broken by those words, shattered by the casual cruelty of people who should have loved her, but she'd also been freed by them, freed to finally see the truth, freed to protect herself, freed to redirect her resources toward good instead of pouring them into a void that would never be filled. I didn't regret the journey, even though it had hurt. Because pain that leads to growth is always worth it, and I'd grown into someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who knew her worth didn't come from what others thought of her, but from what she knew about herself. I was Eleanor Hartwell. I had survived. I had protected myself. I had chosen dignity over desperation. And I would do it again in a heartbeat, because in the end, the only person who could save me was me. And I'd finally learned to do it. 5 years after I redesignated the college funds, Maria, one of my scholarship recipients, graduated summa cum laude with her teaching degree. She invited me to her graduation. I sat in the audience as she walked across the stage, and I cried because this young woman, who'd worked 2 jobs while carrying a full course load, who'd overcome poverty and doubt and 1,000 obstacles, was becoming a teacher. She would touch hundreds of lives, shape hundreds of futures. All because someone had believed in her. All because I'd chosen to value myself enough to redirect my resources toward people who would appreciate them. After the ceremony, Maria found me in the crowd. "Mrs. Hartwell, thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." "You did this," I told her. "You worked for it, earned it. I just opened a door." "You opened more than a door. You gave me hope. You showed me that someone believed I was worth investing in." We took a photo together, this young woman at the beginning of her teaching career, and me at the end of mine, both of us knowing what it means to shape young lives. That photo sits on my mantle now, next to pictures of my grandchildren. Emma, now 14, who wants to be a doctor. Jacob, 12, who discovered he loves coding and spends hours building programs. Grace, 9, who writes stories and asks me to read them and tell her what I think. These children know me now, really know me. We have Sunday dinners where I'm genuinely wanted. We have sleepovers where we stay up late talking. We have relationships built on presence, not presents. Connor and I talk every few days. Real conversations about real things, not polite check-ins. Vanessa will never be the daughter-in-law I once hoped for, but she's become someone I can respect, someone who's trying, someone who's set boundaries with her own mother to protect her family's autonomy. Catherine and I maintain our distance. Some relationships can't be healed, only managed, and I've learned that's okay. My bank account is smaller than it would have been if I'd never established those original college funds, but it's stable, secure, sufficient for my needs. My scholarship fund has helped 11 students so far, 11 lives changed, 11 futures opened. My peace is unshakable, because I learned the hardest lesson a mother can learn, that loving your children doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to the point of erasure. That family is about mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. That the word no isn't cruel, it's necessary. And I learned that the greatest gift you can give the people you love is sometimes teaching them that you won't be taken for granted anymore. Because when you set yourself on fire to keep others warm, everyone suffers. You burn up, and they never learn to generate their own heat. But when you stand in your own worth, when you protect your own flame, when you share your warmth without destroying yourself, that's when real love becomes possible. That's when real family begins. And that's when you finally become the person you were always meant to be, whole, valued, and free. What would you have done in Eleanor's situation? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family who took you for granted? Share your story in the comments below. You're not alone. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength and reclaiming your worth. Remember, protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival.